don't know if you're live. Okay, bring this meeting to order. If everybody can please stand and salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Workshop. Okay. All right, so this is a budget workshop. I'm going to ask Danielle, Ms. Penza, to run through the latest budget numbers that we have here, because there was a number of additions since the last meeting. So if you wouldn't mind taking it from the top and just working your way down.
From the changes?
Yeah, what has changed?
From the one that you guys got the other week, or the one from just this Friday?
Let's go with the latest.
The very latest one.
Yeah, I believe the latest one from Friday.
Okay. There was a change to the reduction in class size parity of program curtailment number, as I noted for you. There was a resignation, so it was a shifting of personnel. It actually went from a savings of $62,828 to $67,000. There were additional medical plan changes and whatnot for the professional staff. That went from an increase of $4,799 to a savings of $12,688. We have a reduction of one special ed one-on-one aid due to the reassignment of a student to outside placement for next year, so that's $36,740. We have increases due to the property, liability, auto, and errors and omission insurance from what I had projected to what the quote came in for from the SBA of $3,255. There's actually a reduction in the workers' comp insurance from what I had projected to the carrier that is going to be recommended. There's actually quite a savings there of $26,258. That's actually a new company that our broker is recommending. He has not yet received the quote from PSBA, but he is pretty sure that PSBA's quote is going to be larger, actually $10,000 more than the quote of this other company. And also on here is an increase for data breach, privacy protection, system invasion insurance of not to exceed $9,000. That's a not to exceed number in there because I don't have an exact number yet, but we feel that it would not exceed that number. So that would be an addition of $9,000. So that brings our revised expenditures to $50,698,122. Our revenues are at $49,342,580, and we are right now using fund balance of $1,355,542. That's where we are today.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Danielle on any of these changes?
Did we get an update from Bruce on the activity fees?
I have that to go through when I do the revenue adjustments.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That I wanted to propose whenever we get there.
Okay. Sorry.
I had a question, Danielle, actually. There was two lines in here that I noted. One said medical plan changes professional staff, and it was like negative $411.95 from May 14th. And then you had another one, which we just recently added, medical plan changes professional staff of $4,799.27. Are these two separate items, or is one a revision of the first?
No, every time I update salaries or account codes and re-download it, it brings in changes, so they're different.
Those are totally separate line items. Okay.
And I could combine them all if you wanted to, but every time we have an update, I try to do it as new, except for those other line items, which you saw, like the parity program. I try to keep them.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure I had the right numbers here.
Well, that 4799 is the older one. There should be a newer one for the 12,000 savings that came out on. Do you have the sheet that came out on Friday? That one.
Okay. Put that in twice. Okay. I guess I had another question. The reduction of workers' compensation insurance $26,000. Did the insurance broker explain why that went down so significantly?
Well, first of all, I had a 5% increase off of the number for this year. The number that came in is actually about $20,000 less than what was quoted and what we're paying this year. So you had my 5% increase plus the additional 20-some thousand. So that's why that number is. It's a new company out there. The coverage is going to be the same. They're actually going to help us put into place a return to work program and certain things to help us get people back to work quicker to reduce paying out. So.
Did they did our DNO or did our workers' comp claim experience change it or something, anything like that over the last 5-year period?
Well, I think they look at the last 3 years, and it has significantly come down since the safety committee has been in place. So that that's part of it. Our factors reduced. But again, this is a new company coming in, trying to get business. So I don't know that next year their rate's not going to go up 10%, and we go back to PSBA and they're down.
Right.
You know.
Get the foot in the door.
Can we lock in rates with this new company over like a 3-year period?
No, I don't believe so, because they do look at your experience every year. And then there's like I said, there's a factor that they use in order to determine that.
Okay. And what's the data breach, privacy protection system invasion?
That's the new, it's newer insurance out there that we've never had before. However, with the new world that we're in, cyber world, it actually is probably one of the more important coverages for us to have. It will cover us identity response, cyber extortion, network security, privacy liability, internet media liability. It just, for what's our network's like and for what could happen out there, I think something for $9,000, being that we're saving some with our premium for workers' comp, I think my recommendation is for us to have this. Of course, it's up to the board. That's why it's in there as a not to exceed. I would have it on the agenda at the committee of the whole coming up for approval. But again, that's up to the board to decide. Like I said, this he has talked to the business office and myself about this for the past couple years. But knowing some of the issues that we've had this year with some different things, I just think it's important to have.
Has he talked, have you guys sat down and conferenced him in with our IT director to discuss what this covers versus, what he feels we might be exposed to in terms of a...
No, I haven't even completed the application at this point, but I kind of just wanted to get the information out there. We can certainly...
Did we try other sources for this coverage?
Would you bundle this with whoever the new guy is, or is this a separate policy
this, I think,
entirely?
I'm not sure who this would be through. This would be separate from our property and our liability. This is a whole separate.
Would PASBA maybe perhaps offer something like that?
I'm not sure who he's going through, Scott. I really don't know at this point. I can find all that out. He was supposed to come in and meet with me, then he had a scheduling conflict, but I wanted to get these new numbers to you guys, so I had him just email me what he could.
Yeah.
I'm curious what it actually covers.
Yeah, that's...
What is the actual liability?
I can forward you his email if you all would like.
I don't expect you to know all the details of that, but
I have it
for conversation here.
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
there's a $10,000 deductible. The identity response fund is for $50,000 to offset expenses to let people know their identity may have been compromised due to network failure, breach, theft of information, etc., and expenses to obtain legal, crisis management, public relations services to restore the school's reputation. Cyber extortion up to $50,000 to cover extortion, money and associated expenses arising out of criminal threats to release sensitive info or to bring down a network. Regulatory fines of $50,000. You can be penalized by the authorities. Network security of $1 million. Coverage, liability of the school arising out of failure of network security, including unauthorized access or unauthorized use of school systems, a denial of service code or the transmission of a malicious code. The privacy liability is up to $1 million, which would cover the losses arising out of schools' failure to protect sensitive personal For corporate information in any format, also,
That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense.
Would our, I mean, do we have an
Somebody
umbrella?
hacks into this district and then uses this district to...
we
Do we have an umbrella policy?
Like a general liability,
Yeah.
but that's not particular
doesn't-
to this data breach. This is its own separate.
No, I understand that. Would our G&L umbrella policy cover some sort of, data compromise? The liability that we'd be exposed to of somebody suing the school district because their personal information
I didn't think so. I didn't think
got
it
out
was
there.
covered.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think
That's Rob calling in. Hello?
Hi, it's Robbie calling.
Hey, how are you?
Welcome to the meeting.
Sorry I thought it was 7:30, so I'm sorry I'm a little late here.
No worries.
No problem.
We're just going through the spreadsheet that Ms. Penza had sent out to everybody last week.
Okay, I'm pulling it up now, actually.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to go on mute.
Okay.
Getting back to that, Andrew, Julie was in the conferences with me, and I don't believe it does. I mean, we can check, but I don't believe it's to this extent that would cover that security for us.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Well, I think we're going to go back, check with Mr. Hawes as far as feasibility of this. Needed, obviously.
I'd be interested to see what the overlap was between our G&L policy and this additional.
I think you can tell
Coverage.
us what, obviously, BCIU coverage had very large.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds like they're carving out special writers for this kind of thing.
Now, there were two other items which were, discussions that we had with the Act 93 group as well as transportation. Are those, you didn't mention those on the expense side?
Oh, because they were from the prior sheet. Sorry. There were Act 93 concessions of $47,696, and there was also concessions from our transportation contractors in the amount of $44,353.
Got it. So the 47 and the 12 for the medical plan changes are basically interrelated, correct? Or no?
No, the professional staff are your teaching staff. The
Okay.
Act 93 concessions is strictly salaries, Social Security, and retirement.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so no, I guess you can move on to the revenue side. You mentioned you had something with the.
Yes. Actually, looking at refining some of that as we're getting kind of closer here. I would like to, and it's not on here, but I kind of wanted to bring it out at this point. Our real estate transfer tax. There's currently a budgeted amount of $300,000 in for 12-13. Currently, as of the end of May, for 11-12, we're at about $254,000, and we actually still have the months of May and June that we'll be getting in June and July to record. I think, or actually, I'm sorry, there's $250,000 in 12-13. And right now we're at $254 in 11-12. I'm proposing to raise that revenue by $50,000 to $300,000 for next year, because I think that's about where we're going to come in this year. So that would be an increase in revenue of $50,000 that I would propose for that. Ticket sales.
Do you know how many transactions that is? To generate that number of transfer tax, do you know how many transactions actually took place? Was it one large? But it's based on a percentage of the sales price. So that's my point is, was there one or two big transactions that took place that may be influencing this number that we may not expect next year, or was this all, $200,000 transactions?
It wasn't just 1 month that this happened. It's been kind of over the course of the year. I mean, I don't look at actually those reports. I've been looking back at history and where we've been coming in May's and June's in prior years. And we've been kind of, actually, even though the economy's down, it's been pretty consistent.
1213 is currently budgeted at
250, and I was proposing to increase that by 50 to 300. Based off of, I mean, this year we're already over the 250, right at the end of May, and I still have 2 months we're going to have to book.
It's about, what is it, like $5 million worth of real estate that needs to change hands? It's 1%, right? Well, what are people's thoughts on that? Increasing revenue by additional $50,000.
Okay. It's historical.
I guess what I would do, I guess my suggestion would be to look at, if you can, I don't know if the data is available or not, just take a look at what the overall, I think I'd like to, residential market is not here. It's going to be a long time before it comes back, I have a feeling, so I'm a little less bullish on increasing that number, but you know, if you're telling us that it's been the consistent for the 2011, 12, and for 9, 10, and 10, 11 at $300,000 a year, then...
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying based on what I see this year and based on historically what's come in for May and June, I think for this year we're going to hit 300. So
What was budgeted this year?
I think 250 as well.
So we're going to have 50K surplus.
That's what I'm thinking in that area.
If we mark that up, does anyone have objections of subtracting it off the use of the fund balance?
That's where it comes. That's where it is.
That's the only place I can take it.
It's the only place you can take it.
So,
Any other thoughts? Anyone?
Crap sheet. Okay with you.
I mean, I'm just bringing you my most current data and trying to look for money anywhere I can. So it's up to the board.
The ultimate optimist.
I mean, I would rather be, I guess what I would rather be is a little bit more conservative and just leave it where it is, because if it comes in at $300,000, it's going to end up in fund balance anyways, right? I mean, I'll do whatever the board wants to do here, but I guess I'm just a little bit more conservative on it. We could raise it to 300. I just...
Well, it sounds like we have history where it's going to be an additional 50,000. So I would suggest, based on that history and we believe it's going to be there, we just go ahead and count it.
Okay, well, I'm getting some nods here, so let's do that.
So around that.
Mm-hmm.
Converse to that, delinquent real estate taxes. I believe there is 1.4 million in for 12/13. As of the end of May, we have 957,000 that we've received. We actually still will have 3 months to record. We record May, June, and July, which I'm in the ballpark thinking may come in around 300,000, which would take us to approximately 1.2-ish for 11/12. And by looking back historically, the first 4 months of this year were actually down almost half over our prior 2 years. So I'm actually recommending decreasing that line item by $100,000 down to 1.3 million for 12/13.
That's not on this sheet yet, is it?
None of these are. I didn't want to put them on because they weren't. But just seeing where we're going to be coming in this year, I think the 1.4 is really pretty high for next year.
I'm okay with that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, ticket sales. As of the end of May, we are at 60,439. And I am proposing to increase the 12-13 budget by $3,900 to put that at $60,500. Because I believe as of the end of May, that's all of our sporting events for the year. So if we go based off of this year, that's where I think we would come in next year. And again, this was the first year of the increase in the ticket prices from the prior years, so I don't have much historical data to go on for that.
How much are you recommending again?
$3,900 increase to $60,500.
Yeah, I'm okay with $4,000.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
The physical fee and the student activity fee account. As of the end of May, and I did speak with Goose today, we are looking at approximately $139,500 for the year, I believe. So I'm recommending a $6,400 increase to bring that to the $139,500 for next year. Again, this was our first year of that, so there's no history to go on. So we could have less students participate, we could have more students participate. I don't know at this point.
Okay. I'm all right with that too. I mean, Anne-Marie, didn't you just mention to me that the tail end of the bubble is moving into the 9th grade this coming year?
Only by about 15 kids. There's
I see.
325 moving in, but in your 5th grade right now, you only have about 254. So there's 2 more years. 7th and 8th grade next year are the last of the 300s.
Yeah.
And then you see a decrease for next year's 3, 4, 5, and then it's significant for K and 1.
Right. Okay.
The only other thing I have, and I'm not sure where the board wants to go on this, it's only about $6,000, but our IDEA funds, the thing to do, because you don't know what you're going to get year to year, is I usually budget for next year what we would get this year.
I'm sorry, what's an IDA?
Special ed funds, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is what, when you hear IDEA.
We actually, our allotment had changed 3 different times this year. The most recent allotment is $503,676, which is an additional $6,041 from what I currently have in. Now, we could hit that. We could come in less. So it's up to the board if you want to just leave where it's at or you want to add that $6,000. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
That was a bump. Yeah.
Just leave it. Okay. Those are the recommendations that I have for the moment in local. State, we still haven't heard anything. They're talking out there that they're hoping to maybe have something passed by the middle of June, but I don't know.
Okay, so net, we're looking at about $60,000 in revenue increases and $100,000 in revenue decreases. So a net decrease of about $40,000.
Give or take, yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts from anyone? On budget? I was looking at the year-to-date expenses that you had sent out, and I was, without knowing what the codes are, it's a little difficult to get an understanding of where there may be additional savings to take a look at. But there were some line items that struck me as being very, with a balance outstanding as being very, very large. One of them, and I don't know whether this is just a timing issue or not, one of them was, let's see what the code is here, 10-1100-329. We have $225,600 in there, and there's $225,600 to be spent. I don't know if that's being offset somewhere else because it's just a coding issue.
It is. We just actually, that hasn't been corrected yet. the 1100 329 and the 1200 329, money was all budgeted there for placements. The 1100 is regular ed, all ed, the 1200 are your special ed. In re-looking at where they really are to be coded, according to the state, they have to be in a 500 category.
So if I go
those
to
monies haven't been transferred out.
I see. So if I go into the 500s, that's actually a deficit of 200 and some odd thousand.
I'm not sure that it's that amount, Anne-Marie, for the year for regular ed, but
Regular ed is, I haven't seen the Bucksmont. The Manitou is down. We only use for 4 kids this year, and 3 of them are special ed. But that was reduced by $100,000 last year. We figured that was a pretty safe figure. And I believe by the time we move regular ed and special ed costs around, it should pretty much weigh itself out. We don't have their bills until the end of 4th quarter. They bill us quarterly.
Is there a way to give this year-to-date report to the administrators are sort of in charge of those domains and get a sense from them whether we're going to come in under or over? Or would they not know? I mean, I'm just trying to get an idea as to, it would seem to me that you'd be able to look at this and say, okay, well, we're running under budget, under what we planned on spending by, $600 some odd thousand. Should we be adjusting these line items going forward into next year's budget? Lower? And what line items would you adjust?
We looked at a lot of that today.
Yeah.
For example, you have a number of 1,100 641s. They're all my textbook accounts. It would equal about 67,000. Which, because you froze the budget in August, I didn't buy any textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
So we did use some of that money to help defray some technology decisions, and I'm not sure if it's been charged to that or not. But that was based on board direction that we just didn't buy the books that were expected to be purchased for this current school year.
Well, I guess that's sort of my question. Is that a one-off for this year, or is that something that systemically going forward that you can say, okay, well, look, do we really need not just textbooks, but I'm saying any particular line item expense? And is that something that we should revise on the overall budget? Because we take last year's budget and we kind of move that forward to the budget we're talking about for the coming year, and we make our percentage increases because we don't have year-to-date or we don't have any actual cost for this year. So how do you, at the end of the day, if you're tracking year-to-date or month-to-date versus our current budget, and we're tracking lower, I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of, is there anything that you can carry forward into the coming year and say, okay, well, yeah, we would reduce the budget by this amount in these specific line items?
This year, when you froze it prior to the purchases for this current school year, if there were, let's take math workbooks, for example, that the building administrators put in their budgets for this year. What they ended up doing was combining whatever might have been in storerooms. And so if you ask them, do they need the money in next year's budget? Yes, because they don't have any more surplus in a lot of those items. In some of my accounts, when you go into No Child Left Behind warning or school improvement, you have expectations of programs that you would sponsor for kids after school, and there's no money attached to it, but it's a requirement. And so each year in my budgets, I allocate maybe about $60,000 because that would be the cost of all the staffing and the busing and the materials. We haven't had to use it because I've had the accountability grant, which comes in August, which I had in my back pocket. But certainly as we now get into the 85 and 90% need for proficiency, if things don't change, one of our buildings are going to get hit. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a cost that it's in the budget each year that I put in as a safety net. But I wouldn't take it out because it would be definitely something you would have to find money for in the future.
You got to pay for it sooner or later.
And I would say at this point, I looked over the elementary budgets because I give them a per pupil allocation because we had a fixed dollar figure and then you took the 2% off. Mm-hmm. Just to give you a ballpark, in 2009-10, the total of the 4 buildings was just about $375,000. They had 300.
Can I interrupt? Just for the benefit of people listening, that's for salary codes, or not for salary codes. That's for coded items that are in the series of codings that the building principals are responsible for. We centralize all of our personnel costs so we don't break down the teachers how much they're making at AIC for this conversation at least. So when she's making reference to these numbers, it represents numbers, since we're talking budget, and was it 300 and higher?
Everything but salary.
Okay.
Salary and benefits.
So everything but
Everything
salary and
salary
benefits. So building operational costs, curriculum, et cetera, is embedded in the numbers that she's about to share with you.
So looking at what they started with this year after the 2% reduction, the 4 buildings' total cost for operation for next year is only $320,000. They have lost $55,000 in the last 3 years in budgets. Now, what was that? That was all their field trips, their assemblies, their extra materials that now we might put in an overhead and the student doesn't get their own copy. We eliminated handwriting books. It is what it is. Anything we could eliminate, the agenda planners, they don't have those for communication anymore. There's a whole litany of things that we reduced. But when I look at their budgets this year, it's pretty much bare bones.
Mm-hmm.
And they have probably a small cushion in each of those, because if you have move-in students, they're going to have to buy textbooks for those students since we have no surplus anymore.
And if I can go back to the, I don't know if you had any further questions on that, Mo.
These items that get put in the budget as a safety net, just in case, and those expenses hopefully never are incurred, actually. I mean, why wouldn't we just say, if that expense actually does get incurred, we use fund balance. And then the next year, when we actually have a real deficit because we spent it, then we could talk about, well, how do we replenish that? We replenish it, do we raise taxes, do we do this, whatever, instead of every year adding things to the budget that may not ever happen, and we're making decisions to raise taxes according to that.
Well,
why not just use
in the elementary budgets, I'm probably talking $5,000-$6,000. I'm not talking big money.
How many other things are sort of like that? Or any?
Nothing in an elementary budget. And in my budget,
Well,
you
full
could
budget,
take out
not just elementary.
$40,000 spread out over my budgets for No Child Left Behind, but it could be a lot more than that, depending. If you have more than one building go into school improvement, it could be significant money that you would take out of your fund balance.
Mr. Sherman already answered.
That's your call.
But I guess my philosophy is, if that should happen, then you use fund balance, you deplete it, but then the next fiscal year, you say, well, now we have to replenish it because it was an actual cost, instead of just putting the burden on taxpayers and everyone else, assuming there might be a cost there, and year after year it just keeps going up and getting higher.
I'll tell you something I'm really nervous about is we have cut the textbook budget since the 2005 school year from $174 down to under $58,000. It just kept, you took $100,000 out, you took more out, you took more out. As once occurred before, I'm not even going to be able to buy replacement books. They're going to be out of print.
That is a problem. That is a
problem. Just to buy, now I used accountability money this year, to buy 3 grade levels of a new reading series cost me over $500,000. So if I need new science books, you have all new core curriculum coming in mandated by PDE. If we look at AP books, and that's demanding new textbooks, they're $150, $175 a book now. That will be another expense that you're going to have to incur at some point. I mean, we make $1 scream with it. Mm-hmm. We buy used books from other schools. We buy what we can to suffice. But in the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be an issue.
Frank, I wanted to give an example of, you had said what else might be something that's, I think this winter is a perfect case in point. This winter, if we could have had a crystal ball, we wouldn't have had to put a dime in the budget or not tax anybody for snow removal. But if we're going to roll those dice and gamble it next year that we're not going to have snow removal, I'm not so sure that's a recommendation I would want to make. because 7 out of 8 winters you get pretty good snow.
Yeah, well, that's a little unpredictable.
But I mean, but it's also when you're talking about some of the price items that she's talking about, $7,000. I think the snow removal, Kenny, what's the budget there?
20. We spent 10.
So that's a little. It's a little heftier.
You could have
Like
one bad
lead.
snow though, and that would.
Yeah. Like in 10-11, we spent $849,000 on electricity. Okay, I budgeted $850. Now this year we're way under. I mean, way under. I mean, we were within 1,000 last year. Now this year with the mild winter and basically with the mild spring we're having, we're going to be way under.
And are we budgeting the 10-11 number there, or 11-12? What number are we budgeting for that this year? The 10-11 number still? The
10-11
typical number?
Yes, because that's the average of what it's been since we had all these buildings. It's basically been around that number.
Right.
But with the mild winter this year, we haven't gone through the gas or the electricity. So we're way under on both.
It's like, well, snowplow.
Usually, you can attribute it to something like that.
Mrs. Trainer, you mentioned we have budgeted $60,000 for No Child Left Behind if a school goes into corrective action. Is that for
School improvement.
School improvement? That can't happen next year, can it? Because we're only in warning right now at one of our schools.
School improvement is the second level.
Okay. All right.
And you could get 1 or 2 more that go into warning and have to do activities for them also.
So you have to do activities for schools in warning. All right,
So you have to develop a plan as to how you're. So they aren't as prescriptive from the Department of Ed as School Improvement 1, but you would have to have a plan approved by them that would include different activities.
Okay.
Once you get into corrective action, there is money that follows.
I was just wondering.
Which is a shame that you have to be so
Reactive rather than
far
preventative.
into, right.
Danielle, what is this line item here? 2400-130. Then it's like
nurse. It's your health salaries.
There's
salaries for the nurses.
Well, some.
It says supplemental services, public health, professional, other.
Mm-hmm. They're in all their different categories.
Yeah.
For buildings, yeah.
I see. Okay. And those look like, when you look at these numbers, those look like those are on target in terms of, we're going to spend those down.
I don't look at it this way. I look at it a different way, and I would have to pull up another sheet out of that.
I mean, I can't tell when I look at these things whether we're on track or off.
You can't, and it's kind of hard even. I mean, I try to print out the report for the month end, and then I try to calculate what's left, and it's quite a formula that I have in what I use.
And the biggest numbers I saw in here were these 1,200, 329.
We're moving that. That's what she said.
I mean, one was 250, the other one was 686,000. Between the two, that's $1 million. I don't know if that's been taken into consideration in the cuts that you already recommended for special ed of dropping it 200,000 or whatever.
Yeah, I'd have to actually look at those codes to know that for sure. But I can assure you that the costs that we're showing are they're in different accounts, and that's what we're endeavoring to do this year to make a consistent way of reporting those numbers.
We actually had changed it to try to keep consistency in the 329 with regular ed and special ed, but then in exploring what the actual accounting manual is, 329 is not the right account, so we kind of changed that midstream and just haven't caught up with. We caught up with charging the actual costs there, but we didn't catch up with moving the budgets around.
Gotcha.
And a lot of those bills haven't come in yet. We know that the money's we're going to get hit for those as we go forward and refine our process more. I would actually like to get into a situation where we can encumber that money so it shows up as an expense, even though it hasn't been invoiced per se.
Okay.
We just don't do that yet.
Okay, any other questions from board members or comments?
Did I get this right? We added more money back into fund balance with the first recommendation that Ms. Penza gave us?
We netted out as a loss.
Oh, we put it out as a...
It netted out as a
Like a $40,000 loss in revenue. So instead of spending 1.355, it's probably 1.395, somewhere in that range.
Hovering right around 1.4.
Because if we're taking money away from books and we're putting even a dime back into fund balance, it should go back into books. And something has to, we have to have books.
That's a sorry state of affairs when we don't have money to put in the books.
Yeah, it's not going back in fund balance. It's coming out of fund balance.
Well, then some of this other money, maybe we can find, because she did a great job of finding some money. I mean, we should find some money and put it back into the books.
And my point isn't for this coming year. It's going to be that it's been reduced so much that there's going to come a point where you're significantly, like Frank was saying, in the year that you need it, you're going to have to put it in. My point was it will be significant money when you put it back in.
The request is eventually going to come.
Well, and you've been kind of putting money aside, from what I understand, for difficult times that might happen. I mean, are you able to kind of draw some of that money and put it back into books? I know during board meetings we've taken money out because that was an option.
I won't know until we get our PSSA results. I have been lucky enough through grant money to be able to help you with book purchases along the way. So we don't know if we get any accountability money, they will give us a list of what items we can use it for. So every year will be different. It will be just me coming to you at some point and saying, hey, it's the year.
I'm not holding out a lot of hope. There could be some
money out and just leave it in my account this year. It's not going to be a problem for the coming year because we're pretty well set with what I was able to do this past year. I was projecting out for you over the next few years.
So 2 years from now or 3 years from now, we may see a spike in that particular line item for books because it's time to buy books.
Her average right now.
You might not. You will see a spike.
Yeah.
You will see a spike. It's not maybe. You will.
Like 500,000, a little bit more than
So I've been able to buy those out of grant money.
I mean, that's going to be a huge budget.
Mrs. Trainer, I know at the high school some teachers, they forego using textbooks and instead they create packets they give their students, which includes information from the textbook and their own supplementary material. I'm guessing it would be a whole lot cheaper than replacing some textbooks.
That's what we have been doing in many cases. We'll be doing a lot of that as we go from Pennsylvania standards into the Pennsylvania Common Core. So wherever we don't have to buy a new book to be able to provide the instruction we need, we're gearing up just to write units.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's being pushed.
Right.
To save money.
It's just where you, if for example, although it's not quantity the way you're talking about other things. For example, if the AP, Princeton says that in order to do an AP Stat course, you now need to include all this material which warrants a book. We would have to purchase 30, 35 books for something like that. Right now we're good with math and with reading, which is across the elementary, because in the last 6 or 7 years I've purchased them. But the last time we were using a book that was about 12 years old, that elementary math is elementary math. I mean, two-place addition just didn't have the glitz. But I ran out. I couldn't buy the used books anymore. So we were forced. That was how old the series was.
And I think what you're referring to are we called them bull packs when I was in grad school, and the advantage of that was you didn't have to buy a new edition. Each time something came out, you just added the supplementary material to the printout, and that's what you handed out the following semester. And
at the elementary, we don't even use science books anymore. What we've done is the teachers have made binders, and there's Blackline Masters in those by grade level, and they sit in each building, and we also have them on the BlazerNet. And teachers will just do prints of anything that they use in their units. There's no sense to buy an elementary science book when you can put your best effort together from all the teachers at a grade level. Sure. So we've been doing that over the last couple of years.
We can see far enough in the future
to save money.
That maybe that's something the foundation could help us with.
Right, thought about that, but
2 years to get it together.
can we also look at when we take, like in the past, when we took money from books, are we able to identify what we spent that money on? So that if it's something for something that...
No, you just put it, you just...
We just cut the budget.
To balance your budget.
Yeah, we just
Took it out.
Yeah.
Gone.
Now, when books are deemed too old to be used, what does the district do with them? Because you could have hundreds of copies of textbooks that
We
are old.
sell them
Okay.
so that we can then buy current used books of other books we need copies of.
I just wanted to make sure
We have a couple of used vendors that come around and they'll take them.
Okay.
So we recycle whatever we can.
Any other questions from board members? Rob, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the public?
I have no questions for the public.
No, all right. I'm asking the public, but okay. If there's no questions or comments from the public, no questions or comments from the board, this meeting's adjourned.
Can I go? I'm sorry. Can I say one thing before we close? I think there's two things we have to look at. Forget the 12-13 school year. Basically, most of the board is, other than Mr. Seminara, has voted pretty much the way they want to vote, or probably they're going to end up voting. If you don't go raise anything, we should actually be talking about the 13-14 school year now. Forget the 12-13. We're going to pass this the way it probably is right now tonight, which means we're going to take 1.4 out of fund balance. Yet we know we're going to be $4 million short for the next year. I say we start talking about next year right away. I think we look at, Dr. Otto will make recommendations. Get rid of AP classes, get rid of transportation, get rid of band, get rid of sports. It's not too late to start talking about the next year. Forget the 12-13. Let's go for the 13-14. I think we should start doing it in August. I think you got to tell the taxpayers now, because I think if you don't raise something, and I'm not advocating forget even the index, which I said I would never go below, but I think if we take out 1.4 out of our fund balance, we're going to be in serious trouble 13-14. So I said my piece. That's all I got to say, but I think you better start talking about the next one. Forget the one we're going to vote on in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I think you better start talking about the next one already.
I think we have been talking about the next one.
Not to the point where we're going to talk about maybe getting rid of transportation.
Well, look, Kevin, I think we have been talking about. I've suggested several times we go to. Let me finish. I suggested many times we go to and take a look at what we can cut in terms of our curriculum. We've suggested
but I'm not talking about a curriculum manager. I'm talking about like.
Well, where do you think 70% of our budget lies?
Again, okay, I'm listening to board members sit around tonight. They're appalled that we can't buy school books. You want to correct curriculum? You got to cut stuff that's not curriculum. You got to cut transportation. You got to cut sports. You got to cut band. Yet every time it comes around, and I'm not advocating doing that. I'm the one solely against it. But I think if we don't start looking at that, I don't think there's any more. According to our professionals sitting aside of me and behind me, academics were done. We've gutted it.
I disagree with that.
Well, that's you, but I'm going to take Dr. Otto's opinion and Anne Marie's opinion, because they're the educators who are more experienced than the rest of us. That's just my opinion. I think we can't pass a zero increase budget. That's me. I said my piece. You can adjourn the meeting, and
the recommendation of the administration is to use what? Fund balance?
No, we never asked them.
I'm asking them right now.
Okay, what do you think? What do you think?
If 1.4 is not an acceptable number for the administration, what is?
I didn't have a specific number etched. I think the
Okay, I'll flip the question. Sorry to cut you off. I'll flip the question. Do you think a tax increase is appropriate? If you don't want to answer the fund balance, either way, it's the same answer. I'm just asking. Again, I said my piece. I'll vote. Everybody knows how I'm going to vote. There's no increase. There's no way I'm going to vote for it. I'm not advocating even the index anymore.
Well,
I'm just advocating something.
I agree that we need to start looking at next year's budget August is fine, but I think we never went back to what is the core classes we need and how much are the core classes starting to build back in, rather than just saying let's cut this and cut that and cut that. Put it back into the beginning of what we need to graduate these students. I mean, all of them. So we can't just cut one thing or the other.
We sat here 2 weeks ago, and the Curriculum Instruction Committee said that they were going to take a look at these electives and take a second look at electives, take a look at enrollment in electives. I mean, when I was looking at just the stuff from 2 years ago, or last year, we had classes with 7, 8 kids in it.
Can I was interrupted in the middle of my question.
I'm sorry.
I do want to answer it. You know, to be totally blunt, I don't know what a good number is for fund balance. I understand both sides of the, I try to look, as a superintendent at the big picture. I am alarmed by this number. This is a high number. I mean, you look around the county at other people that are dipping into fund balance, and I've listened to the people that have come forward, and I've listened to both sides of the debate. And there's no doubt that amount of money is going to have an impact. I don't know what it's going to be yet based on other factors that have not come forward. But you can't take $1.4 million and not affect your bottom line at some point. I don't. And I watched it happen in Twin Valley.
I completely understand that.
I watched it happen.
Also not have a number and just make up some number and put that burden on the taxpayer. You need to say, listen, I've done my math. I think this is the number I need in fund balance. Then we can say, well, let's talk about raising taxes. But you can't just say, it's not a warm and fuzzy number. Let me make it a little warmer and fuzzier and throw the rest on the taxpayer. It just doesn't make sense.
But you know what? I agree with you. I agree with you. But there's no magical number in this case. You know what I mean?
Well, then 1.4, which that's the number.
I mean, the problem is,
take it out.
for the last 2 years, we've done what's been suggested here, which is, well, let's just split the baby. Okay, we'll use $750,000 out of fund balance, and we'll use $750,000 from the taxpayer, and we'll raise taxes. And the result is, in the following year, we throw a surplus of the tax increase. And we did it 2 years in a row. And I just sit there and I think to myself, well, okay,
and you're right.
This year we're tracking $640,000 under budget. What did we raise taxes last year?
I think we have to look, too. We look at Twin Valley, and I haven't seen anything doom and gloom there. Obviously, they have no money to work with, but they still have all the programs.
No, they don't.
They have football.
They have football, that's it.
They have band.
They got rid of wrestling, they got rid of other things.
Well,
they got rid of some of their band.
Wrestling,
yeah, they got rid of
yeah. Right. So, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom there that way.
Again, that's fine.
But obviously, we got to understand what's Corbett's grand plan. I
know there's no magical number, but if you don't, you cannot recapture it. And again, maybe the index isn't it. I don't care, 0.25%.
No, you're not going to get
30%. I don't care what it is. If you even take $250,000 to the taxpayers, what is that per person? It's not much. I mean, again, I'm not advocating
Kevin,
taxes. Trust me.
You say that every year, and it becomes accretive. So after 3 years, it's not. Yeah, but $75 anymore. It's $375.
Okay, but here's the deal: we also cut textbooks $150,000 over 3 years. That's disgusting. That's disgusting. Even if you raise $150,000 and put it back in taxpayers,
I don't think it's a question of how much money you're spending on textbooks. It's a question of no, it isn't. It's a question of what kind of education you're delivering.
Obviously,
were we spending more than we should have been on textbooks to begin with?
If we don't fix the AYP thing, we're going to be in serious trouble. We can't gut. Okay, again, they're the professionals. Have we gutted enough?
But what I was saying before is, once you really actually incur those expenses, and then you've taken the money from the fund balance to do that, then we can have an easier conversation.
You're right.
Okay, this previous 11-12 year, we spent $700,000 because we had to buy these things, and we depleted fund balance. Now we might have to talk about maybe replenishing that. Well, how do we do that?
Yeah, but we also
project something that may never happen and put the burden on the taxpayer.
Correct, but we're throwing a surplus for two. One, we had decent weather, which saves us some, and two is they've cut all spending. In other words, she might have spent some books this year, but she didn't probably buy one textbook other than the one she absolutely had to, because we told her not to. We've been telling her for 2 years not to spend anything more than she absolutely has to. So that's why we're in the textbook situation, for an example. And the other thing is, with again, we all agree it's a mild winter. We got lucky this year. How do we know next year we're not going to be 50 feet of snow and we're going to blow the $600,000 surplus? I'm not advocating I'm not advocating raising the index, which I said a month ago, and I admit I'm fully wrong. But I'm also saying is you got to do somewhat. I don't know what. And I think to sit here and go, and also to our if you sit here and you go all the way to fund balance and you go back to certain, our contractual people and say, oh, by the way, we wanted some help, they're going to say, well, you didn't do anything. You blew your fund balance. We might blow our fund balance. I don't know. Everybody, I don't know as much as anybody else. I said my piece. I'm done. I know for now you weren't here, Mr. Seminara, so there were 7 people, 8 people in the room, 6 voted our 7 people voted no increase. That's fine. I said my piece. I disagree with it. And if it comes down to 0%, I'll say no again. I mean, it is what it is. That's my personal opinion.
I think when you look at that the $4 million that we have in fund balance, that is the taxpayers' money.
Absolutely, it is.
So, I mean, to consistently maintain that $4 million and then not spend anything out of that, and then next year come back and then say, we're going to have a tax increase when you didn't do anything with that savings account, rainy day fund. Everyone refers to it something different. I just think that's wrong.
But maintaining a healthy fund balance, this is a healthy fund balance according to PDE.
But Kevin, what do you use fund balance for? I've sat here on this board. Wait a minute. I've sat on this board for 5 years, and I've watched fund balance go from 2.9 to 4.2 million dollars. And in that time, we've had the worst economic maelstrom that this school district has ever seen.
You're also warning everybody that next year,
and we overspent fund balance by $1.6 million on a stadium. So we should be up at like 5.8 million.
So say we end up with 2.6 at the end of next year, a year from now. And you're the one that's telling everybody, and you're the one that keeps telling everybody it's going to be $4 to $5 million in the hole. So now you're
no, I'm not the one saying that.
Okay, but you all say everybody sits there and realizes it's going to be there. So you leave 2.6 and you're 4 point in the hole. You're going 1.4 done. Now you're starting out with you're negative, and the tax increase is only going to be what, $700,000. So where do you propose getting the other $700,000? That's why I said
I think you have to demonstrate to the taxpayer.
Then I think you better start talking about the 13-14 budget early and let the taxpayers know. Transportation might be gone. Football, all sports might be gone. Band might be gone. AP classes, everything might be gone. That's fine with me. But I don't think we're going to wait till January and start telling people, oh, by the way, now we realize we're $3 million in the hole. We only got $2 million in our fund balance.
Well, Kevin, it's easy to say. We tried doing that last year. The issue is we don't know where we stand on this year's budget until sometime in October.
Correct, but we didn't start this process until
yes,
April
we did.
This year.
No,
we did. We had one budget meeting in February this year.
I'm sorry. At the Finance Committee, we started this discussion last August. And we had that discussion in September, and October, and December, and January. We came forward with a recommendation from the administration to discuss this.
I said my piece.
Could I make a clarification, please? We are not, the way I look at it, we are not going to have a $640,000 surplus. We're not adding $640,000 to fund balance at the end of this fiscal year.
No, but we budgeted to spend $640,000, and we did not spend it.
Correct, but it's not a surplus.
But we're not increasing fund balance.
I just wanted to be clear that it's not
we're not
a surplus.
increasing fund balance.
It's always been the topic of discussion for the almost 4 years I've been here, is how low does fund balance dip? Because that's the number we want to know what that is. How deep do you ever dive into that number?
That's right.
That's the number you need to have.
And we've been saying probably around $2 million, $2.1 million for July and August. But I just wanted to make that clarification that we're not necessarily adding $640,000 to that number out there.
But the difference is that our expenses were projected to be $640,000 higher than they were.
But we also froze everything.
So, I agree, but I just want the terminology out there.
Well, it's semantics as far as I'm concerned. If you sit there and say, I'm going to spend $1.6 million and you spend $1 million, you're under budget by $600,000. That's math. So, okay, it's not a quote-unquote surplus, but you're under budget by $640,000.
But I think it's fair to say, and I need to say this, if we had not had a budget freeze, there are things that we would have gone ahead and purchased and bought that would have brought that number down lower.
That wouldn't probably necessary.
Look, we needed a budget freeze last year. We needed one this year. You're going to need one next year. Until the economic downturn is over, and we're going to need funding freezes every year until we see.
No, I'm not debating that. I just want to represent that part of the reason that number is where it is based on circumstances that were put upon that budget.
I think the better way to describe what just happened last year was we allocated $600,000 more than we had to. And a result of doing that, we've increased taxes because we thought we needed $600,000 more than we actually needed. So I don't know if you want to say you saved $600,000, you didn't save, you didn't spend, whatever you want to call it. The fact is we've allocated that money in last year's budget. We didn't need to spend it, but we taxed people because we said we needed it. That's what happened.
Any other commentary from board members on this? issue.
I think that in the future, for next year, I do think we need to start as soon as possible. I think recommendations, and I think we need to be provided with a list. Maybe these aren't recommendations, but I think we need to prioritize. We didn't see too many recommendations this year in terms of, like I'm looking here in the options not recommended. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe we had 10 coming into the school year with. Coming into the budget season with. I would like to see more in the future. Some of them might not be, maybe eliminating transportation completely. That should be an option listed. We should know how much
I
that will
can't
save.
believe that you could think about eliminating transportation.
I'm not thinking about it. I just think it should be listed to know how much savings.
Why not? Absolutely. Why not?
I think Kevin's right. There's reality.
Absolutely. You only do
whether it actually happens or not.
By law, you only do
those are the
special
realities
education.
of what
Why would you not do that? Think about all the private schools we don't have to support. We don't have to go to. We don't have to go to any private schools, and we don't have to support anybody but special needs children. Now, I don't know what the net will save us. And again, I feel really bad because I know we've had long-term, and I know the transportation partners aren't going to like this. But okay, as everybody says, it's a harsh reality. What are you going to do? If it saves us $1 million or $1.5 million, sure.
Can you imagine the liability of the lawsuits from other kids
There's no
getting picked up
lawsuits.
and accidents occurring?
There's no lawsuits. You don't have to provide for it. But I guarantee you, you could decide to cut transportation, that room will be full. But if you tell them right now this year and you say, okay, I'm going to raise your taxes each $50 per 100,000, we'll keep transportation.
Kevin, if you're talking about, if you're talking about $1.6 million raising, you need to raise taxes every year. What you're suggesting is you're advocating raising taxes every year by above the index and special exceptions for the next 3 years.
I just said no, not the index. I said not the index this year.
Well, then what you're suggesting doesn't solve the problem that you're proposing exists.
But you're also saying you're also taking no increase in tax revenue, which you have a stream of possibly getting revenue, and you're telling us there's $4 million that we're going to be short next year. Why wouldn't you capture some of it and putting it in, and adding to our general fund this year? So next year you don't. You're
what I'm saying is we've got $4 million sitting in the bank account that has been building for every year for the last 5 years.
Okay.
By more than $4 million, by more than what we actually have represented there, because we've overspent on other things that we shouldn't have. Okay. And I'm saying that's the taxpayers' money.
It is.
We shouldn't have taxed them that money. We should be giving that money back to them. That extra $100 or $200 or $300 that a family of 4 is saving on taxes this year, it makes a hell of a lot more. It's more important to them than it is to this discussion here tonight.
But if they're $4 million short next year, or our gap is $4 million.
You're going to have to use fund balance, and you're going to have to raise taxes. You're going to have to make cuts. What do you mean there isn't fund balance? There's $2.5 million worth of fund balance sitting out there.
If you're $4 million and you got $2.5 million, you got to come up with $1.5 million. You can't raise the index that far. The index won't be $1.5 million.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I did want to make another point here. The strategic plan going forward, it's been suggested that we open that up and figure out what we can do in the future. For example, do we need to have dedicated independent gym classes, art classes, etc. in the elementary school, or can we maybe ask that? Can we
then you better start July.
Curriculum?
We've suggested that.
Yeah, okay, well, let's start in
we
July.
suggested that 2 weeks ago.
Okay, well, then this budget's done and start in July then.
We need to put that
But
into
I'm saying you
action
better warn the
to get that
taxpayers.
I mean, there's a lot of savings there. How many heads are there in those programs?
I think we ought to be looking at our curriculum, and because that's where the majority of this budget lies. It's in salaries and benefits, and the only way you're going to address that is by sitting down and looking at curriculum and deciding, doing a cost-benefit analysis on which programs you need and which programs you don't need.
I think we need to start doing that as soon as possible.
Even more than curriculum is everything that's not required.
Look, every school district is dealing with these issues. We're not the only ones.
Every school district is raising taxes except for us from Muhlenberg.
Can I point out, just for Mr. Conran, Curtis?
Not every school district's at 30 mils.
That you have to allocate 240 minutes of class prep time for all elementary teachers. Now, there's ways to minimize a couple of things, but you can't eliminate all of those special classes because you need to find 240
minutes. I think it's something we need to look into. There are a lot of different options that we might have available, but we don't know what those options are yet until we look at revising our strategic plan. And in order to do that, we need to get started soon, from what I've heard. So I think we should get started on that.
I'm just glad my daughter's 10th grade next year.
No, I like to think right now. I think we are basic in this district. I can't imagine we would go any lower. Really don't. I think we'd be falling, but obviously we got to do what we got to do.
Is everybody done commenting up here at the board level? Okay, Mr. Schott.
Question. I'm Schott. Someone find me a second. I asked a question, I think 14 days ago, and nobody had the answer. Does anybody have the answer tonight? What's the average value of a home in Daniel Boone? Does anybody know?
I think the average or the median is somewhere around 130 or something like that.
I know, Mr. Basil, when we first met, we were on a committee together, and that information was given to us. I can't find it. I have it somewhere, but I can't find it. And I was also part of the last strategic plan update, I believe, and I think we were given that. I don't think find that either. I have it, but I can't find it.
I think it's like I think Mr. Wolf is right. I think it's around 124 or something like that. Yeah.
And I know the press isn't here tonight because I think they misquoted me. Because when the statement was made for $100,000 for the earlier proposal of the .33 mils, somebody made the comment. I'm not saying it was a board member. Somebody made the comment that was $90. Right?
No, it's $90 for the index.
Right. But so for $135,000, the average home in Danielsville, .33 would be somewhere around $50.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Sounds about right.
So I'll just repeat what I said in my position. I think everybody has to share the sacrifice. I think the curriculum has shared. We don't have the aids we have. I don't think those kinds of things are add-ons. I really don't. I think that should be part, and you've taken those out. I think last year, teachers took $1 million less. That's one of the reasons why I think your surplus went from $3 million to $4 million. Not all of it. That's not the whole reason, but that's part of the reason. And I think that was a sacrifice. And once the base is taken away, that if it's 4 years or whatever it is, that's there. And there's increases after that. I understand that. So I've seen curriculum sacrifice, and I've seen staff sacrifice. I've seen making free sacrifices, and other employees sacrifice. And in my opinion, I don't think the $50 is that much more of a sacrifice than what those people do. I think it has to be a shared sacrifice. Thank you.
David Poole, 443 Bill Road, Douglasville. I think that if you put one more tax increase, one more tax increase, one more tax increase, whether it's $50 this year, $75 the next, $25 the next, you're still nudging up toward a millage level that is going to wind up being unsustainable. You've got to draw the line somewhere. I congratulate the board members who are willing to hold the line on this. Use the fund balance this year. Lord knows what's going to happen next year. Agreed. But it needs to slow down at this point in the game. And speaking for the taxpayers, I do think that any tax increase at all is going to be a tax increase too much. Thank you very much.
Any other comment from the public? Okay, seeing none, this meeting's adjourned.
Good night, Robbie.
Gary.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Just give you a heads up.